Hey guys, Terensu here with another Tekken rant for you. This is basically my 1 week, after 1 week of digestion or 1 week of experiencing it, Season 4. I won't call it a post-mortem because we got a lot of Season 4 left to go. But this is kind of after a week, my initial thoughts with the season and what's going on with it. So there's been a lot of positive response to Season 4. There's been a lot of people playing the game. Your heavy hitters in the community like Main Man and the others have kind of given a stamp of approval. There's been a few people, I guess, that didn't like it. I think it is a mixed bag, and I'm going to go into why. First of all, Kunimitsu obviously is the big thing that I was most excited about this season. She's back. She's fun to play. She looks great. Her costumes are great. She's an awesome character, and I'm very glad to have her back in the game, even if it is Kunimitsu 2. I hope she hangs around through to Tekken 8. And I want to say this, and this is going to go into what I have to say about the rest of the season. Kunimitsu is an excellent Tekken character. And what I mean by that is she kind of plays this unorthodox mix-up game, and she has a lot of quick mids and a lot of damaging mids and quick combo moves. She has a throw mix-up game that's really fun out of a stance and back turn stance. She can mix you up with throws, and she just looks cool. Her animations are fun, and she has her strengths, but she also has her weaknesses. And in my opinion, that is what makes a good Tekken character. And I don't know if they designed Kunimitsu that way on purpose, or if it's just because they plucked her from Tag 2 and kind of retro or future fitted her into Tekken 7 that she is that way. But I think Season 4 really reveals a bigger problem with Namco's handling of Tekken going forward. And of course, the casualization of fighting games is something I've complained about and Bump has talked about, and everybody has complained till they're blue in the face about things like X-rays and rage and comeback mechanics. It's not really the time or place for that, but I will say that what makes Kunimitsu a good character is that she has what she's good at, and she has a weakness, and that is her lack of really strong lows. She struggles with opening people up. You can do it, but you have to work a little bit harder. And so that's what makes her, in my opinion, an excellent Tekken character, because that's what makes Tekken an interesting game, is that characters can do some things, but they're bad at others. And so you have to find a way to play to your character's strengths while covering their weaknesses. Now, unfortunately, as we get into Tekken 7, it has just been, in my opinion, and I think many other people's, that instead of really tuning characters as far as we're going to make this part of them stronger, we're going to make this part weaker, or this character is good at XYZ, but they're bad at, A, B, C, D, so we're going to give them a D and give them a B so that it balances out. Instead of that, the trend has kind of just been to cover up characters' weaknesses as buffs, and so that just kind of makes everybody the same, which is boring. And then another downside of that is that everybody is super strong. One of the things they touted early on when they announced Season 4 was that they were going to increase the health bar. Well, the health bar was only increased like 5%. But they also nerfed wall damage across the board. And as we'll talk about with Lee here in a little bit, if your character's identity is wall balance or wall damage, well, you just got screwed out of damage, and they probably didn't do much to help you out to adjust for that. There's no, every character, in my opinion, should have a list of maybe 5 things they're good at and 5 things they're bad at. And, you can kind of play around with that a little bit. But in my ideal, that's what makes a more interesting fighting game. And, of course, some tiers and some characters are going to be better than others, even if you do balance around such a philosophy. But I think it's ultimately where you have to go to come up with a more fun fighting game. Instead, what we've seen with Tekken 7 is that, strong characters just keep getting stronger. Weaker characters sometimes get stronger, and then sometimes they just have weird things happen to them that don't really matter much at all. Characters like Gigas, Gigas is a lot better this season, but they still kind of, they don't really know where to go with him. I'm going to talk about Lee in a second. I feel like they have no idea what to do with Lee. I have no idea what they're thinking with Lee. So yeah, Kunimitsu is a great character because she's good at some things and bad at others. But the problem is, in a game where you have so many characters that are good at everything, it's very hard to play good Tekken characters like Kunimitsu, and I am biased, but I think Lee is a good Tekken character because he excels at some things and he's bad at others. It's just hard to play these characters in a game where you have characters like Zafina who have super moves like forward, forward, 4, which is a mid that homes and is safe on block. You don't even have to think at a distance playing Zafina. You can just go out there and throw out forward, forward, 4s. It's going to hit. You're completely safe. What's the point? You know, she has great movement. She's got that down back 1+2, which is a low that now it is launch punishable, but it's practically unseeable. You're not going to be blocking that on reaction more than likely. I mean, just why would you play some of these other characters? And I think that's always been the case in Tekken. You know, if you go and watch Evo of Tekken throughout the years, it's always going to be a handful of top-tier characters. But it hasn't gotten better. It's gotten worse. And, you know, for all the talk that the developers, Harada and Murray, had about bridging a skill gap and bringing up lower-tier characters, I think it's just kind of more of the same. Some characters that were really low, like Lars. Lars got a lot of love this patch, and he's in a much better place. But then some characters, like Lee, just kind of got, you know, not really nerfed, not really buffed. They're just the same, and they're not any better or worse than they were. I know Lee is contentious. A lot of people say he's actually really good, and he didn't need to be changed. And then some people like Fighting GM, who is a Lee main, will tell you, oh, he's got hitbox problems, and he needs XYZ, he's bad, he's the worst character in the game. You know, it's all subjective opinion. It's kind of hard to do it anyway. But I hope you understand what I mean, and we'll just look at a few of these things here so you can see. There are a lot of like, why did they need this type changes in Season 4? And, you know, I only play a handful of characters, so I can't really comment on some things, but there were some things that were just so stupid obvious that it's like, why in the world do they need that? So let me get, this is the Season 4 change document. Let me scroll down through here till I hit. Devil Jin is a perfect example. So if you look at these notes right here, you've got change behavior when down. You've got a straight damage buff on down forward 3 to 4. You've got increased attack ranges. You've got there, and admittedly, there's a little damage nerf there, but my goodness, look at all this other stuff. You can now buffer the input on that quarter circle back 1+3. The while rising 4/4, the range of the attack. Devil Jin was not a bad character. He's never been a bad character. And it just very much seems like Namco has favorites. They will always be strong. They will keep getting stronger. And, you know, I'm okay with having strong characters, especially Devil Jin, who, you know, Jin and Devil Jin are, like it or not, they are the face of the franchise now. But he just gets stupid strong and stronger every season. Does he need any of this? No. I'm not even saying they have to nerf him. You know, given the new move, and maybe if you really must, increase some damage in a few places, but really, did Devil Jin really need all this help? You know, you look at something like that, and then we'll talk about Lee here. So let me find him. And there's Lars. Lars got a lot of love. I'm actually a big fan of the Lars changes this patch. Where are you at, Lee? So as we hunt, just remember, and here's Bob. Let's stop at Bob for a second. So Bob is essentially a full-out Mishima now. You know, now he's got a hop kick, which he didn't have before. I don't know the exact frames on it, but you can go watch Main Man's breakdown if you want to see the exact frame information. But basically the idea is Bob couldn't launch certain moves beyond a frame threshold. Well, now he can. He plays very similar to Tekken 6 Bob again now. You know, just why? Bob was a disaster in Tekken 6. Nobody liked that. Nobody liked how strong Bob was. You go look at the old Evo. It's just Bob, 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 Bob. Why would you bring Bob up this high? I don't know how popular Bob is as far as character picks. You hardly ever see him online. Now you're going to see him everywhere because of this. You know, I played maybe a handful since launch. And it's usually the case that characters that don't get played a lot have a high win rate because nobody knows how to deal with them. And I usually lost to Bobs online, and now you're really going to lose to Bobs when people start playing these changes and this stuff starts getting out. But anyway, here's Lee, and I just want to rant and complain about Lee, and you can think that he was good during Season 2 and 3 and that he didn't need many changes, but the changes that they do make are just so bizarre. It really just tells me they have no idea what they want to do with him. So right off the bat, the first thing is you can now do his Rage Art out of Hitman, which, okay, great. It's technically a buff. We'll take it. We didn't need it. I don't think too many people were doing his Rage Art out of Hitman stance anyway, because if you need to Power Crush, you're just going to use 3. Why waste your rage when you can just do a 3 to eat it? Unless, I don't know. I like Lee's Rage Art for, you can actually do damage resets with it. If you do a combo and then you tailspin the enemy and you hit the Rage Art just late enough, the damage will actually reset, and so you can get full damage from the Rage Art. That's pretty useful, but you can't really do that out of a Hitman. At least I can't think of any way to do that out of a Hitman, so that doesn't really help you. Then you've got this 133, which is part of Acid Rain, and so they actually nerfed Acid Rain again. You'll remember in, I think it was Season 2, maybe, they changed it so you couldn't get a combo off Axis with Acid Rain. Well, now they nerfed it again, so now when you block it, it's negative. It was negative 10, now it's negative 11, so you can actually punish it. And the frame advantage upon hit went from 1 frame to 0 frame. What was the point in nerfing this move? Who is using this consistently? I played Lee a long time. I still can't do this consistently online. Maybe now that the netcode is much better, I can. But I guarantee you the average person who picks up a casual Lee is not doing off-axis Acid Rain combos. And that's one of the best things he has. So why do you nerf that? The problem with Lee is his identity, remember, as a good Tekken character, would be he's hard to use, but he gets high damage. That would be the extent of Lee. But instead, you have to work really hard to get the standard 63, 64, 70 damage that every other character can get. And wall carry is still insane despite the nerfs to wall damage. So what's the point? Lee is a good Tekken character, but why play him when you can play other characters that can do the same thing for much easier and do crazy amounts of damage? Heck, you could probably carry with Lucky Chloe and just, combo into Cali Roll and all sorts of crazy things for half health damage combos. Why bother with a character like Lee? Lucky Chloe is pretty punishable, probably on the same level as Lee, but you can just get tons and tons of more reward for it, where you could still be punishable as Lee and get no reward for it. So what's this? We've got 3-3. When hit or guarded, 4. Oh, that's Trick Kick. So that's another insanely hard just frame. It got buffed, which, good. It's a buff. It should be because it's a hard-to-do technique. But then again, who is using this online besides Fighting GM and I'm Your Father? And even they probably aren't using it that much. Who can do this consistently? So it's like if you nerf Acid Rain, what's the point of buffing Trick Kick? Do you understand? These are both insanely hard to do just frame moves. So what is it? Do you want his insanely hard to do just frame moves to be rewarding? Or do you want them to be not rewarding? Because you buffed one and then nerfed the other. What's the point? We have during Hitman 1-4, change frame advantage on hit from +0 to +2. Okay, that's great, I guess. Wonderful. During Hitman 1+2, decrease distance between the character and the opponent when the move hits. Okay, great enough, I guess. Let's see. Forward 2-1, they increase the distance between the character and the opponent when the move hits. This is a nerf. At least I can't figure out how this could be a buff. Because used to, if someone didn't roll backwards on a forward 2-1 on hit, you could feather land them, and both hits would strike the opponent on the ground. Now, only the second hit hits them. So basically, your feather landing O-key has been nerfed when people don't back roll, which sucks. You can still run up and do down, down, back 4, I believe, but that's much harder. And so, again, you've nerfed his just frame moves, but here you are, you've given him, he used to have a pretty easy O key follow-up, and now you've made it harder to get damage off that. So what is it? Do you want Lee to be high risk, high reward? Do you want him to be, you put the time in, you get a lot of damage, or do you want him to be a Tekken 4 character where he doesn't take as long to learn and you get extremely high damage? What do you want Lee to be? Lee is at his best when he has high execution for high reward. That's what he should be. But Namco doesn't seem to understand that. So we've got forward 1+2. That is aggressive 1-2. That was nerfed. Second hits damage, which changed from 24 to 20. You can't complain too much about this because a lot of characters and overall damage was nerfed. It still sucks because, Lee has to work really hard to poke for damage and those sorts of things, and his combos are pretty hard for damage. And then so here he's losing more damage. I think I could complain less about Lee if they just left all this stuff alone, because I think even with the overall reduced damage, if his damage would higher, that would actually balance him out more, because he still has some other disadvantages, but his damage is a little higher, so it's worth it to play him. He's a good Tekken character. Let's see. Down 3-2-3, change frame advantage when blocked from basically launch punishable to slightly less punishable, so you can't launch that. The only time you would use that move is when you get behind someone or you're just trying to throw it out to surprise someone who doesn't know about that last hit maybe, so you can get the big damage combo. If you do manage to land this on somebody, it's like 80 plus damage, but I don't believe that's a natural combo. So unless somebody's back turned, you're not going to catch them in that. So yeah, it's great. It's not launch punishable anymore, but you probably weren't going to be using that when you could get launched anyway. So what's the point? This move, this is a very Lee change. So the damage has been knocked down on down 2 from 18 to 17, but you basically can get a very difficult to land counter hit combo in there. But again, it's not like a crazy high damage counter hit combo. So again, what was the point? Do you want Lee to be more in line with the rest of the Tekken 7 cast, or do you want him to be high risk, high reward? Again, Namco, what do you want him to be besides in the game? I think back to Season 1. I think at one point a patch came out and they actually buffed his unblockable by like 2 damage points. It's just like, why? The moves that you are buffing and changing are either key parts of his identity or moveset and you're doing it badly, or they're things that no one is using like that. Namco just has no idea what to do with this character. So the back 4, the damage was nerfed from 22 to 20. 2 damage, it's going to screw you over if you need 2 to win the round, but that's pretty negligible, especially as fast as back 4 is. Back 4 is one of his quickest moves, pretty hard to punish on whiff, so I'm not too miffed about that one, especially as part of the overall damage nerfs. I think it was fine where it was, but okay, whatever, 22 to 20, no big deal. This is one of the few Tekken 7-esque moves he has. It is a power-crushing mid wall bounce. It is heavily punishable on block, of course, but it was a good thing he had because you could get people at the wall, and at least you had that mix-up with the low or the mid, and if they guessed wrong, you could get a wall bounce combo, but now they've changed the damage down from 25 to 20, plus the wall damage nerfs. So this hurts Lee a lot, ultimately. And you've got this up forward 3, and they increase the lower range of the attack. I was using this to some success against Fatalis last week, a few days after the patch. So that is a buff. I do use that move from time to time. Here's his new move for the patch, which is While Rising 1-4. And While Rising 1-4-3, which is the same move, but it takes you into Hitman stance. That is, I believe, a while standing 13 frame Punisher. But as Fighting GM pointed out, there's not many of those moves in the game. You got stuff like, I think he said Brian's soccer kick is one of those moves. So, yeah, you're fighting Brian and you block a soccer kick. Great, you can punish it with 1-4. But, this move doesn't really do anything for him. Maybe if they had brought back his while standing launcher from Tag 2, heck, call it a new move. Just give him 1-4 and make it some sort of launcher. That would be cool, but no. Instead, you get this 1-4, which is just kind of another ho-hum move. kind of like in Season 2, they gave him forward 4-1, which is essentially useless other than as combo filler. The real purpose of that move, I think, was to make it easier to carry out combos with Lee. But at the same time, you've done this easier combo filler, kind of easier, but you still haven't compensated him enough in other areas to really give him an identity or to make it worth it. You're still going to want to use back forward 2 carries and those type of things for maximum damage instead of this new forward 4-1. It's basically like an easier carry for people who I guess want to play Lee casually, but it still doesn't get more Lees into tournaments, I don't think. So still kind of pointless. Let's see. Daring right, sidestep, 3+4 and 3+4, 4 for the Hitman version. And both of these receive frame buffs, which I believe that attack is a mid, so that's pretty good. But it still doesn't, it doesn't do much for the rest of the issues that I have with this. And I'm still going to play Lee. I'm not going to complain. Lee for life is a main. But I just get the feeling they don't really know what to do with him. Ideally, I think they should either let him be high risk, high damage, and give him back some of like the safer acid rain, keep the high damage on this, or you have to do what I wouldn't like and just Tekken 7-erize him, which, give him something like Zafina's forward 4 or Claudio's hop kick. Lee just really doesn't have that dangerous move to make you respect him. And he doesn't really have a scary 50-50. He's got slide mix-ups, but, you're better off just blocking so you don't get hit with the misstep 3-4. It's just not a very dangerous 50-50. You're not going to make a lot of high-level players scared with what Lee has to offer in his 50-50. Now, a good Lee can be a terrifying thing, but unfortunately, these changes aren't going to get more Lees into tournament. If character diversity is what we really want, this isn't going to get it, guys, unfortunately. Where is Anna? So Anna is another character, not my main, but like a sub, I guess you could call it. I play a lot of Anna. And, of course, Anna's biggest problems are she kind of lives or dies by the 50-50, right? You either look like a genius playing Anna or you look like you got completely owned because she lived and died by the 50-50. And, that was her thing. She had a strong full crouch mix-up, and so she didn't have very good punishment. Well, in this attack, they went and made her punishment better in this patch, and they also gave her a power crush out of Chaos Judgment stance. And, I'm all happy to play a buffed Anna. Of course I like that. I'm not going to lie and sit here and say I want my characters to get nerfed. But at the same time, seeing this makes me sad because Anna was another example of a good Tekken character. She had some extremely strong points, and she had some extreme weaknesses that you had to cover up. You had to figure out ways to fight through her weak punishment and her poor range and, trouble opening people on certain attacks. But no, we're just going to shift everybody back towards a happy medium. But they really didn't even do that because they took some characters like Bob and Devil Jin and just cranked them way up the tier list, instead of bringing everybody back towards the middle. They picked the Golden Boy characters, cranked them up some more. They reached into the trash bin and picked out a few Gigas and Larses and elevated them higher and then said how generous of a god they were with their patch. And then just kind of did some weird stuff to some other characters, and then they took some other characters and took their identity away, and sometimes in good ways and sometimes bad ways. So it's very late. That's my rant on Season 4. Overall, I'm just so very happy Kunimitsu's back and that she's a good Tekken character. She's not busted. I think she has a good chance of making it into Tekken 8 and future entries now that she's not an old woman, which we know Namco hates. And she's also got this really cool, great redesign. There's been a lot of people playing her, so that's good. Got to keep those pick rates up, guys, so that we know that she'll be back. And she's just a fun, good character. I just hope that, this won't be the last patch we see with Season 4, obviously. I don't think a lot of this major stuff here, like a Power Crush out of Chaos Judgment. I don't think this kind of stuff is ever going to get taken away, at least not in Tekken 7. All I can hope that they do is kind of look at Lee at least and say, what sort of meaningful changes can we make to give him an identity? And I hope they take a hard look at the rest of the characters and say, what can we do to give these guys identities, strengths and weaknesses? Don't be afraid to nerf. There's going to be, vocal fans of certain characters that are going to whine and complain like I'm doing about Lee, but that's okay. I think ultimately you'll have a better game, and as people play it longer, they'll get to like it. And if your character got nerfed, or your character didn't get what they thought, or if your character did get really strongly buffed, just think for a second beyond that. Think what it means for the entire game for your character to have an instant win button. And I'm not saying anybody has one, but there are some characters that have things that are pretty darn close. So just kind of think about what that means. Bump always says when we do our podcast, everybody wants their instant win button, but instant win buttons are bad for the game. What we really need is characters that have strengths and characters that have weaknesses, at least in my opinion. But this is all my opinion. I'm just a noob at Tekken. I'm not the best player. You guys can probably point out a lot of factual errors and flaws in my statements, and I'll take that in stride. But what do you think about Season 4? Do you think the balance hit the nail on the head? Do you think it's a mixed bag? Do you think it's terrible and bad? Kunimitsu's back, so it can't be all that bad, right, fellas? Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I'd appreciate it if you hit the like and subscribe, if anything, just to see when I release more bad takes on Tekken so you can ridicule me for them. But anyway, thanks so much for watching, guys. I appreciate you.